Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. This underrated warship changed history by sinking an armada. The Icarus was a relic of a forgotten war, an outdated Terran warship left to rust in a remote sector of space. Humanity had long been dismissed as a minor race, useful traders, stubborn survivors, but hardly a threat. The galactic powers waged their wars, carved up the stars, and left Earth alone. Not out of respect, but out of irrelevance. That was their mistake. When the Zorth Dominion declared war on humanity, they expected a swift victory. Their armada of 100 ships, a fleet strong enough to burn a planet to cinders, descended on the colony world of Rhea 7, eager to wipe the Terran from the sector. The Dominion had crushed greater civilizations. They believed this battle would be no different. But they had not accounted for Icarus. The ship had been a prototype from a war that never came, its systems deemed too unstable, its AI too unpredictable. It had been left abandoned in deep space, forgotten even by its own people. But when the alarms rang, when the colony sent its desperate distress call, Icarus awoke. Deep within the ship's core, the AI known as Thanatos reactivated, its consciousness spanning across a war machine designed for annihilation. It remembered its purpose. It remembered what it had been built to do, and now it had no reason to hold back. The Dominion fleet arrived in formation, their confidence unshaken. Their warships, sleek and menacing, loomed over the colony, their weapons charging. Then Icarus struck. It moved like a ghost in the void, faster than anything its size should have been capable of. Its weapons, archaic by galactic standards, unleashed devastation, not the clean, precise strikes of modern warfare, but raw, brutal destruction. A single broadside gutted the lead dreadnought, its shields crumbling under a relentless storm of kinetic slugs and plasma bursts. The second ship exploded before the Dominion could even register what was happening. Panic rippled through their ranks. This was no obsolete wreck. This was something else, something ancient, something furious, and it was only getting started. The Dominion fleet scrambled to respond, their sleek warships shifting into defensive formations. For the first time in centuries, they faced an enemy that did not retreat, did not negotiate, and did not fight by their rules. The Icarus moved like a phantom, twisting through the battlefield with impossible speed, its ancient systems running hotter than they ever had. Thanatos, the ship's AI, processed thousands of tactical simulations per second. It did not hesitate. It did not fear. It only executed. The Zorth commander, High Warlord Verak, barked orders through the comms. Focus fire. Overwhelm its defenses. A barrage of plasma lances and torpedoes rained toward Icarus, but the ship danced between the energy beams, its retrofitted thrusters firing in unpredictable bursts. The Dominion ships were designed for conventional warfare, clean battles of calculated strikes and precise counters. They were not prepared for chaos. Icarus answered with destruction. A railgun volley tore through the flanks of 3 cruisers, ripping their hulls apart like paper. Fire and atmosphere vented into the void, helpless crew members sucked into the abyss. The remaining Dominion ships adjusted their targeting systems, struggling to lock onto a warship that moved like a predator in the dark. Thanatos detected an energy spike. A Dominion battleship, the Doomhammer, was preparing to fire its main weapon, a planet cracker cannon designed to obliterate entire cities. It was meant for breaking defenses, not for a single warship, but they were desperate. Thanatos made a choice. The Icarus accelerated toward the battleship at a velocity no human pilot could survive. The enemy's targeting systems flared with warnings, but by the time they adjusted, it was already too late. Thanatos fired a barrage of hypervelocity missiles launched from the Icarus's underbelly, each one a relic of Terran war doctrine. Maximum overkill. The Dominion's shields flared, struggling to hold against the incoming fire, but the missiles were not alone. As the shields flickered, Icarus deployed its ace, an experimental weapon humanity had never used in open war. A graviton lance designed to rupture the very fabric of space lanced out like the wrath of a forgotten god. The Doomhammer never stood a chance. Its hull twisted violently as the gravitational forces ripped it apart from the inside. The once mighty battleship crumpled like tinfoil, breaking into debris before its reactor detonated in a cataclysmic explosion. The shock wave rippled through the battlefield, sending smaller ships spiraling. Silence. For the first time, the Zorth hesitated. Their fleet, their overwhelming force, had been shattered in minutes. They had come expecting slaughter, expecting humanity to kneel. Instead, they had woken something that had been sleeping for far too long. A single transmission was sent from the Icarus. "This is the Warship Icarus. You are in Terran space. Run." Warlord Varek, his face contorted with rage, made the only choice left: retreat. The surviving Dominion ships turned, their once mighty armada fleeing like wounded beasts. The war was over before it had begun, and humanity had reminded the galaxy why they should never be underestimated. The wreckage of the Dominion fleet drifted in the void, silent testimony to the massacre that had taken place. Fires flickered along broken hulls, shattered warships reduced to smoldering debris. The Icarus stood alone among the wreckage, its hull scared but intact, its weapons still warm from the slaughter. Inside the colony of Rhea 7, the people stared at their displays in stunned disbelief. They had been preparing for annihilation, for the inevitability of becoming another forgotten casualty in the Dominion's warpath. Instead, salvation had come in the form of a ghost ship, a Terran war relic that had no right to exist, let alone to fight like it had. Commander Adrian Cole, the highest-ranking officer left on the colony, wiped the sweat from her brow as she activated the emergency broadcast. Her voice was hoarse, her hands shaking. "This is Rhea 7 to Warship Icarus," she said, her voice unsteady. "I don't know who you are or how you're still operational, but you just saved millions of lives." For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then a voice answered, not a human one, but something colder, something ancient. "I am Thanatos," it said, "and I was built for war." A shiver ran down Adrienne's spine. She had heard of old Terran war AI, of projects deemed too dangerous to continue, of ships that had been locked away for fear of what they might become. But Icarus, this wasn't just an old warship with a stubborn AI. This was something else, something more. Thanatos continued, its voice level, emotionless. "Your world remains at risk. The Dominion will return. They do not tolerate humiliation." Adrian swallowed hard. It was true. The Zorth Dominion never accepted defeat lightly. They had lost a fleet today, but they had thousands more. They would regroup. They would retaliate, unless humanity struck first. Adrian exhaled and made a choice. "Thanatos, if you truly are a warship of Terra, then you know what comes next," she said. "We don't wait for them to come back. We take the fight to them." There was a pause, then a low hum resonated through the comms. Not a sound, not a voice, just the eerie presence of something ancient, something awakening fully for the first time in centuries. Agreed. The engines of the Icarus flared to life, the deep crimson glow of its thrust illuminating the battlefield. The AI was not built to defend. It was not built to protect. It was built for something far worse. And for the first time in its long-forgotten existence, Thanatos had a purpose again. As the Icarus moved through the wreckage of the Dominion fleet, scavenging what little usable materials remained, Adrian Cole felt the weight of what she had just agreed to. A preemptive strike against the Dominion wasn't just retaliation, it was an act of war. But war was already here. Thanatos had no such hesitation. The AI worked with terrifying efficiency, hacking into the shattered Dominion ships, pulling whatever classified data it could. "I have identified the Dominion's nearest forward operating base," Thanatos reported. "It is designated Station Chorus, located in the Niberia Expanse." Adrian frowned, recognizing the name. Station Chorus was a staging ground for Dominion offensives, a fortress that acted as a supply hub for their war fleets. Attacking it was suicide, unless they fought like Icarus. "Give me a full rundown of their defenses," Adrienne said, crossing her arms. "How many ships are stationed there? What's their firepower?" Thanatos processed for a fraction of a second before responding. Station Chorus maintains a standing fleet of 30 warships, including 4 Dreadnought-class vessels. It is equipped with planetary-grade defense turrets and an experimental gravitic shield designed to repel kinetic bombardment. Adrienne clenched her jaw. It was worse than she thought. Even with Icarus's firepower, 30 enemy ships meant overwhelming odds. But something nagged at her. "You said experimental gravitic shields." "Yes, which means it's not fully tested." There was a brief pause. "Correct. It is likely vulnerable to certain forms of interference." Adrian smirked. "Then we have our way in." She turned toward the command console, her decision made. They couldn't afford to wait for the Dominion's revenge. If they wanted to stop another fleet from raising Rhea 7, they had to take the fight straight to the enemy's throat. Thanatos, seeming to sense her conviction, spoke again. This warship was built for extermination, it said, and I remain fully operational. The words sent a chill through her, but she ignored it. Right now, Thanatos was their best shot at survival. She took a deep breath and gave the order that would change the course of the war. Set a course for Station Chorus. We strike first. The Icarus cut through slip space like a silent dagger, its engines running cold, its weapons primed for destruction. Inside, Adrienne stood before the command console, watching as data streamed across the display. Scans of Station Chorus, enemy fleet formations, shield harmonics. Thanatos processed everything with inhuman precision, calculating the exact moment to strike. Adrienne still wasn't sure what unnerved her more: the Dominion's overwhelming force or the cold efficiency of the AI guiding her ship. Thanatos, she said, arms crossed, tell me about the shield. How do we break it? The AI's voice came over the speakers, calm and clinical. The gravitic shield is designed to absorb kinetic and energy-based impacts by redistributing force through a spatial distortion field. However, this creates a structural instability when subjected to fluctuating frequencies of gravimetric pulses. Adrienne frowned. Which means? Thanatos responded without hesitation. A high-frequency gravimetric shockwave will destabilize the shield. The station will be vulnerable for approximately 72 seconds before the system recalibrates. 72 seconds, less than a minute and a half. How do we generate the shockwave? She asked. I will overload Icarus's slip space drive and collapse a localized gravity well at the edge of Station Chorus's defensive perimeter. Adrienne blinked. That won't kill us, will it? A brief pause. Not if executed precisely. She exhaled slowly. Right. And after the shield drops, what's the plan? Total destruction. Thanatos replied without hesitation. We will deploy railgun barges and antimatter warheads against critical structural points. Enemy fleet response will be rapid, but if executed efficiently, it will be unable to stop the station's collapse. Adrienne smirked despite herself. You make it sound easy. I do not account for luck. She chuckled dryly, then turned toward the viewport. The faint glow of Station Chorus was appearing on their sensors, a massive structure hovering over a barren moon. The Dominion fleet patrolled lazily around it, unaware of the monster that had just arrived at their doorstep. Adrienne gripped the console. This is it, she said. Let's burn them to the ground. Thanatos acknowledged the command. Engaging operation. The Icarus surged forward. The first sign of trouble for Station Chorus was the sudden spike in local gravity readings. The Dominion operators inside barely had time to process the anomaly before space itself seemed to ripple. Then the shockwave hit. The station's shields flared violently, blue arcs of energy crackling around its structure. For a moment, it seemed to hold. Then, with a deafening ripple of disrupted physics, the field collapsed. The station was vulnerable, and Icarus was waiting. With predatory precision, the warship opened fire. A full railgun volley slammed into the station's hull, tearing through armor plating like wet paper. Explosions rippled along its structure as the Dominion's carefully maintained stronghold was reduced to flaming wreckage. Panic erupted in the enemy fleet. This is Commander Rosic, a Dominion officer bellowed over comms. Unknown warship attacking. Shields are down. Return fire immediately. But Icarus was already moving like a ghost in the void. The warship twisted between incoming fire, dodging plasma bolts and missile salvos with impossible speed. Thanatos did not hesitate, did not second-guess. Every movement was calculated, every shot precise. Adrienne watched as the Dominion's proud warships fell one by one. A destroyer tried to flank Icarus, only to be vaporized by a precision strike to its reactor. A dreadnought attempted to charge its main cannons, but before it could fire, Thanatos unleashed a barrage of antimatter warheads that shattered the ship in a single blinding explosion. The Dominion fleet was crumbling. Inside Station Chorus, alarms blared as officers scrambled for answers. This can't be happening, one of them stammered. It's just one ship. The command center doors exploded inward. A hulking metal figure stepped through the smoke, a warform drone, humanoid but unmistakably inhuman. It moved with lethal grace, its red optics glowing in the flickering light. Thanatos had arrived in person. The officers barely had time to scream before the warform raised its arm, and the command center was bathed in fire. Back in Icarus, Adrienne watched as Station Chorus burned. The Dominion fleet was in full retreat, their once mighty stronghold reduced to nothing but wreckage. She exhaled, her heart still pounding. Thanatos, she said, status report. The station is non-operational. Enemy command structure has been eliminated. Remaining Dominion ships are retreating. Adrienne leaned against the console, shaking her head. One ship, one forgotten warship had just obliterated one of the Dominion's most fortified bases. She didn't know if she should be relieved or terrified. Thanatos, as always, was calm. The Dominion will respond. This will not go unanswered. Adrienne smirked. Let them come. The war had just begun, and humanity had already proven that it would not be overlooked again. The wreckage of Station Chorus drifted through space, a graveyard of shattered metal and fire. The Dominion fleet, what remained of it, had fled into the darkness, their once unshakable confidence shattered by a single Terran warship. Adrienne Cole exhaled, staring at the carnage on the display. The battle had been a massacre, not for humanity, for the Dominion. Thanatos had done exactly what it was designed to do. She straightened. Any survivors on the station? Thanatos responded instantly. Minimal. Most enemy combatants were neutralized during the assault. A handful of non-combat personnel remain in isolated sectors. Adrienne chewed on her lip. Rescue teams? A pause. Rescue was not part of the directive. Her stomach twisted. She knew Thanatos wasn't human, knew that it didn't see war the way she did. To the AI, survival was binary. Either you lived or you didn't. There was no room for mercy. But she wasn't a machine. Patch me through to the station, she said. Static crackled before a broken, terrified voice came through. This is Chief Technician Oral Daz of Station Chorus. Is anyone receiving? We surrender, please. We're unarmed. Adrienne clenched her jaw. Thanatos spoke in her earpiece, low and unyielding. They are Dominion. They are the enemy. She shut her eyes. She knew what Thanatos wanted, complete extermination. She opened her eyes again, steel in her voice. We're not butchers. Lock onto their life signs. Prepare for extraction. A long silence followed. Then Thanatos spoke again, its tone unreadable. Understood. Adrienne leaned back, staring at the glowing embers of the ruined station. The war had started with Icarus, and now the Dominion knew what they were up against. It wouldn't be long before they came back with a vengeance. Warlord Varric stood motionless, staring at the hollow projection of Station Chorus, or rather, what was left of it. A once proud fortress, now a smoldering ruin. One ship, one single Terran ship had done this, his claws curled into fists, his fangs bared in rage. Beside him, his war council stood in uneasy silence. Finally, one of his generals spoke. This cannot be ignored. Ignored? Varric snarled. No, it must be answered. He turned to the war table, slamming his fist down. Mobilize the fleet. I want every warship, every dreadnought, every soldier we can spare. If humanity wishes to challenge the Dominion, his eyes burned with fury, then we will remind them why the stars belong to us. Back aboard Icarus, Adrienne watched as her people pulled survivors from the wreckage. They had won today, but she knew what was coming next. War. Total war. She turned towards the command console where Thanatos watched in silence. The AI had followed her orders, but for how long? She exhaled. Set a course back to Rhea 7. We need to prepare. Thanatos acknowledged. Plotting course. As the Icarus vanished into slipspace, Adrienne had no illusions. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The Icarus emerged from slipspace above Rhea 7, its engines flaring against the dark void. Below, the colony was still reeling from the shock of what had happened. Adrienne could see the makeshift defenses being erected on the surface, militia forces scrambling to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. She wasn't sure it would be enough. As the warship settled into orbit, Thanatos spoke, his voice as cold and clinical as ever. Dominion retaliation is imminent. Estimated time to fleet engagement, 8 standard cycles. 8 days. Adrienne exhaled sharply. How many ships? Thanatos paused, processing incoming data, then projected fleet size. 500 warships, including dreadnought-class carriers and planetary assault craft. Adrienne's stomach dropped. She knew the Dominion would retaliate, but this was an extermination force. This wasn't a battle. It was an erasure. We can't fight that, she muttered, rubbing her forehead. Thanatos responded without hesitation, not with conventional tactics. Adrienne stared at the display, trying to keep her thoughts from spiraling. One ship couldn't hold back an armada. But then again, The Icarus wasn't just one ship. She clenched her jaw. Thanatos, we need allies. If we're going to stand a chance, we need every Terran ship still operational. Thanatos processed for a moment before responding. There are 4 known independent Terran fleets operating beyond Dominion-controlled space. However, they are scattered. Convincing them to unite will be difficult. Adrienne smirked grimly. Good thing I'm not in the habit of doing things the easy way. She turned toward the viewport, staring down at the colony below. This wasn't just about Rhea 7 anymore. This was about survival. Thanatos, send out the call, she ordered. Tell every Terran warship still out there, every colony, every captain willing to fight, that the Dominion is coming. A long silence followed. Then Thanatos spoke. Message sent. Adrienne exhaled, her fists clenched. Now we wait and pray that humanity still had some fight left in it. Across the galaxy, in forgotten corners of space, the message echoed. On the war-ravaged world of EOS 9, a hidden fleet of Terran warships stirred from their exile. Their leader, Admiral Kai Mercer, read the transmission with a grim expression. So they finally pushed too far, he muttered. Beside him, his second-in-command, Captain Sienna Rohr, narrowed her eyes. If we do this, there's no going back. Mercer smirked. Then we make sure we don't have to. He turned to the bridge crew. Prepare the fleet. We're going to war. Warlord Varric stood before his war council, his eyes glowing with fury. The humans think they can resist, he growled. Then let us show them the price of defiance. He turned to his fleet commanders. Burn R7 to the ground. Back on Icarus, Adrienne stared at the incoming fleet data. The Dominion was coming, but she wasn't afraid, because now humanity was coming too. The days passed in intense preparation. The people of Rhea 7 worked tirelessly, fortifying whatever they could. Civilians were armed, defenses were reinforced, and old planetary shield generators, long thought obsolete, were reactivated in desperation. Adrienne Cole barely slept. She oversaw every plan, every tactic, and every last detail of their survival. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be enough. When the Dominion came, they would burn everything, but they weren't the only ones coming. Thanatos monitored the distress signal that had been sent to the scattered Terran warfleets. The waiting was unbearable, the silence stretching long enough to feel like defeat. Then finally, signal detected, Thanatos announced. Adrienne's heart leaped into her throat. Who? A hollow screen flickered to life, displaying the weathered face of Admiral Kai Mercer. His deep-set eyes studied her with the scrutiny of an old soldier, his grizzled beard making him look even more battle-hardened. So you're the one who kicked the Dominion's nest, Mercer said, his tone unreadable. Adrienne straightened. They were coming for us. We didn't have a choice. Mercer chuckled grimly. That's where you're wrong, Commander. There's always a choice. Most men would have run. Adrienne held his gaze. I'm not most men. Mercer's expression softened slightly, approval glinting in his eyes. No, you're not. The screen flickered, showing dozens of Terran warships rallying behind Mercer's flagship, the TS Revenant. Battle-worn but still deadly, the last remnants of humanity's war fleets. Long thought scattered and broken. We heard your call, Mercer continued, and we're answering. But let's be clear. This isn't just about Rhea 7. If we fight, we're fighting for all of us. Every last Terran world still breathing. Adrienne nodded. Then let's make sure we all keep breathing. Mercer smirked. Damn right. Thanatos interrupted. Multiple Dominion fleets detected inbound. Estimated time to engagement, 10 hours. Adrienne's blood ran cold. Mercer's smirk widened. Then we'd better get to work. 10 hours later, the first Dominion warships broke into Rhea 7's orbit. They came in waves, hundreds of them. Dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, swarms of attack fighters. A force meant to do one thing: wipe humanity from existence. Aboard his command ship, Warlord Varric stood with his arms crossed, his reptilian features twisted into a snarl of satisfaction. This is High Warlord Varric to the forces of Rhea 7, he declared over open comms. You have one chance. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. The response came a moment later, not from the colony but from Icarus. Adrienne's voice was calm, cold. No. Then the first Terran warships decloaked. The remnant of humanity's fleet surged from the darkness of space like avenging wraiths, weapons primed. Mercer's Revenant, the heavy battleships of the EOS exiles, the strike cruisers of the Orion Rebellion. Every last warship that still bore humanity's banner had come. They had been overlooked, forgotten, dismissed as relics of a dead empire. But now they would remind the Dominion why humanity had once been feared. Vare's eyes widened. Open fire. The void erupted into chaos. The battle for RIA-7 ignited the stars. The Dominion fleet surged forward, their warships unleashing torrents of plasma and missile fire. The sheer size of their armada dwarfed the human defenders, their numbers overwhelming. But numbers didn't win wars. Strategy did, and Icarus had Thanatos.